Very happy that 6 strangers have come to see us and talk about our. My name is Christopher Cobb. I'm the founder and director of Brotherhood. We are a men's organization based out of Roanoke. We serve pretty much the entire East Coast. We have members as far south as the Keys and as far north as Pennsylvania. We were born out of a plant medicine church in Orlando, Florida, that served ayahuasca, the Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church of Mother Earth. When I attended that place for the first time, I had been sober for 2 years, but still battling pretty heavily depression and anxiety. All of the trickier parts to addiction were showing themselves. But I found monumental healing in that facility and quickly fell in love with the process of integration, which is the conversations after the ceremony. The first weekend I went to volunteer, they were talking about this program called Being Through You, which is a 8-month transformational addiction recovery coaching certification that also came with post-ceremonial integration certification. This was a co-ed facility. We didn't do any men's retreats or women's retreats for years. And then we did all of a sudden, like the opportunity came about for us to do men's retreats. And I just, in the beginning, thought it was something cool to do to go do with the guys. But that very first weekend, the impact of that weekend was so great that I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of a group of men who had a common mission to heal and be better, be more genuine. It started off with doing an integration call once a week on Thursdays. My first week, I had 13 men show up, and then in a matter of weeks, there were 30 plus. And they were all wanting more. They were all wanting to do more, to participate more than just plant medicine. Like we wanted to have more calls, and people were wondering where we could meet in person. And that's kind of how this was born, the need to almost take up space, to create these containers, the retreats, the Zoom calls, the mentorships, and the courses as a way for men to have access to community. There's guys here, there's 4 of us here who have participated in retreats or been to our online containers like Zoom and Telegram. And one of them kind of share a little bit about their experience and what they gleaned so far, and maybe take a few questions from you.
My name is David Kaliba. I came to the group out of, it was a last resort for me, in mid-April, I think it was. Kind of found myself in a place of just feeling lost, feeling worthless, not really understanding my place, or not understanding why I had a place, why I took up space in this world. And my wife, who used to work with Sarah, who connected with Chris, got us all together to sit in a room. And I sat down and I said, I don't even know. I told her on the way there, I don't know how to start this conversation. I sat down at the table and I said, I don't even know what to say. And then immediately just vomited words for 30 minutes, just because of how the space felt. It was, I hadn't felt anything like that before. It was a non-judgmental space that I could stop judging myself too. And so decided to be more involved with that, get more involved with that process. And through that, it's kind of shown me a self-worth that I've only really fully realized through some plant medicine this past weekend. I've realized where my presence lies, or more accurately, why I wasn't present. I was constantly, time traveling to the past and to the future to reflect on the memories that were coming up. For instance, sitting down with a group of people like this, I would reflect on previous circles that I sat in, or something I saw in a movie or TV show or something like that, and either have apprehensions or expectations about that situation, the coming up situation. And I did that with every aspect of my life. So back on track, I found the group, and it started as a lifeline, literally, quite literally as a lifeline for me. And it's turned into this beautiful space of accountability that's helped me find that accountability with myself and allowed me to start healing, start finding some healing that I didn't even know the path to. I didn't know how to find it. So they gave me back something that I had never been taught to find myself through parenting, the parenting when I was a child, and then the parenting that I was doing to myself as a result of the parenting when I was a child. So I'm excited. We got a retreat coming up. I'm excited to take part in that and get some actual more FaceTime, more of this kind of stuff with these men that I sat on these calls with and been held accountable by, and even more importantly, been able to offer my advice and realize that the things that I say have a ton of value, and find the self-worth in my own actions, my own thoughts, and in being present on my days. So and it's, we all do it together. It's not just Chris Defer here he's the figurehead, he's the starter of the whole thing. He started the whole thing, but we all help each other, we all support each other. We've got people who would be socially defined as super successful, people who would be socially defined as huge failures in life, and they're listening to each other and learning from each other. And there's a power in that I didn't know existed outside of fiction. So, and that's why I wanted to come here today, because to be able to talk to anybody else about this, it really fills my cup up to tell other people about my experience so far, and to be able to spread the word of what we're doing, because I know dozens of people that could benefit from something like this if they would just take the chance and open themselves up like I did. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for the inclusion.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's important to note, prior to this venture of mine, I had it in my head that I was going to be a solo artist. I was going to go be a coach and mentor, and I was going to have an Instagram profile and an office to work out of, and clients would be knocking my door down to come get whatever it was I thought I had. And that first men's retreat really put things in perspective. And I understood that the only way this thing would work is if every man had a space, if every man was allowed to speak up. I'm not the guru of the organization, I'm just the model of what we refer to as Dante coming out of the flames. Like I'm a guy with a story. Not many stories that come shocked me, threw me just about any man. And I'm very over every day. Because of that, they can show up more genuine and feel safe to express themselves in ways that society's got kind of a stranglehold on us. It's pigeonholed us into all these ideas of what they say we are, but there's a deeper truth. You're little boys that just want to be seen. We just want to be validated for the kind of acts that we do in the world, for the things we know how to fix, for the things we know how to create, and for the absolute love and compassion that we obviously all hold in our hearts. allowed to be around other men and express themselves. It's a beautiful thing to witness unfold. The last retreat, we had a guy, you saw him walk in there, and you would just automatically assume that his name is absolutely the way he carries himself, the way he was dressed. That weekend, he was held literally, physically, and emotionally up in the air. And was allowed to just unload years of and that's what brings me joy. Because when you do it, it gives me permission to do it. Selfishly, I created this for me. This happens to work out for me.
I appreciate both of you sharing your words. I came to meet Christopher a couple of years ago through, of course, strange circumstance, which is a story in itself, but kind of a cosmic connection. Exactly from the moment I met him, that there's a reason we were in each other's lives. I definitely knew that today. Christopher, about a year ago, invited me to help cook at a men's retreat with him. Okay. And I had never witnessed or been part of men's circles before. Something I definitely felt a yearning for. Felt like, just in my heart, I knew that like connecting with other men in the vulnerable space meant something. But after kind of being with you for that first weekend and then having the ability to join in several of your retreats with me in the Brotherhood, it just opened up a world of something that I deeply connected with. I've had the opportunity, fortunately, to cook for several retreats, and you know, every single person carries a medicine in the heart, and comes in many shapes and forms. And for me, sharing my love and sharing food is definitely a medicine I carry. And you have specifically allowed me to deepen up into that. And being part of these retreats has been very transformational for me to be able to really serve and to witness the evolution of these men's circles over the year, and to see how people connect and really open up in this vulnerable space. It's something this world desperately needs. And by you allowing for these containers, or by you just being you in this container is for me, it's really wonderful. It's amazing. Like, my perspective is unique in that I'm part of retreats when I'm there, but I'm also like part of servitude at the same time. And it's amazing to witness like this vulnerability that happens. I expected to go to a men's retreat, just be this rough, beat your chest kind of, energy, and sure there could be some of that, but it's this really tender, powerful space. And it's just something I never witnessed before. Anybody could certainly benefit from it. But it's just, there's reasons why people are connected and why anybody is hearing this at this moment. I'm honored to be on stand with you.
But it's interesting you mentioned how men kind of were softer. Women's retreats, from what I know, women show up to those and they become fierce and rough. It's the opposite with men. We're like, holy shit, we can put all of this down. We don't have to hear anything and get goosebumps. And a lot of these guys, I'd say probably 50% of the men who we have on the roster have known intimately in space before. So when we have retreats, Joel can attest to this. When we have retreats, all of us who know each other instantly start welcoming the guys who have not been. And it almost automatically becomes this cohesive unit before the guys that are in it. And I love that. That's one of my favorite parts. Because the fear of most men, there's apprehension to be vulnerable. Even to be seen shedding a single tear is a threat. When in reality, at least in my case, not going to say broadly in general, like if we are allowed to express those things, then we can show up more fully. There, the job is doing.
Other than I was really blown away and impressed, wondering, gee, where you guys been my whole life? I found out about Community Brotherhood kind of randomly through a friend, Jonathan Roberts, and he was the only guy I knew at the retreat when I walked in the door. And I was really impressed with how therapeutic the shadow work was, the cold baths, the being vulnerable, a whole bunch of things that happened that weekend. It was just, in a positive sense, overwhelming. Keeping in mind, for those who don't know, 2 years ago, I went through a very sad divorce. And part of the fallout of that was my daughter sided with my ex-wife and I lost my relationship with my daughter. So that was what was most precious to me. The spouse and the child I lost fellowship with them. At any rate, I was devastated. And on that retreat, it was exactly what I needed at the time. I was so depressed at the time, I couldn't even get my story out without breaking down in tears. So it was just what I needed. Anyway, I came out feeling like a bird was off my shoulders finally. And just realizing I'm not the only one suffering. Someone else and really hurts. So anyway, I was very impressed, and I would highly recommend it for all men to check it out. I mean, I don't know of any men who don't need this. Every man needs what Unity Brotherhood has to offer. You know, especially if you're going through something, at least in my experience, something traumatic and devastating. That really, it was just what I needed, just at the right time. It was divine timing, sure. Yeah, because the funny thing is, if Jonathan Roberts, my buddy, he had approached me back, but I was still married. I'm like, why would I want to go to that?
Right.
So I mean, by divine timing, I was like, why would I need to go to that? You know. So, but as soon as he invited me, I was like, no questions asked. I'm there. I don't even care what to do. I'm there. I didn't ask him any questions. I had no idea what to expect. Not a clue. You know, I just took it on faith.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is, as Joel mentioned, various forms of shadow work. Nothing contrite, nothing hocus pocus, or just good, honest, deep conversations with various practitioners. Who Luke from Anahata led the retreat that Joel came to. We had another guy, Hunter, who led the last retreat. He's from Sacred Sons, the world's largest men's organization, who I'm befriended. Yeah, and it's just about real nitty gritty work. There's no love and light stuff around. We don't talk a lot about God because everybody has their own individual interpretation. We do bring in the divine and ceremony and clothes and all of that, but we leave that stuff to each individual person to decipher for themselves and decide how they're going to bring that into the space.
I like how at every retreat, it's not just about wrapping your mind about something or diving in mentally. There's a big somatic piece of it. It's moving your body, and your body releases energy. There's a big piece of not just working with your mind, but working with your body that I really appreciate.
Absolutely. The last retreat, because I always want to stay away from like the stuffy protocols of retreat. You got to do ice baths and all this other stuff. So we dedicated an entire retreat called Boys Come Alive, and the entire retreat was about play and competition and exploration of what it's like to touch in with your inner child again, and the conversations that come along with it. And that was my favorite. That was good. Yeah.
No, you weren't. I just wanted to add that piece in because
I'm glad you said it.
it's not just this like mental deep dive.
Yeah. The next one coming up, challenge accepted in North Carolina, is what the name implies. Going to be in the middle of summer in an open 10-acre field in eastern North Carolina. In a tent.
Yeah.
But the whole weekend is dedicated to facing the challenge. Not just physical, there'll be a lot of somatic stuff that Debbie said. how we show up for everything from relationships to being a pyramid, to the remedial task that you put off at home. Everything from asking for help to accepting help, which is a big one. A lot of us, we can learn how to ask for help eventually, but then when the help comes, it's like, man, yeah. That's it. And questions?
So is this an extension of integration, or is plant medicine used at the retreats that you
Brotherhood
held?
does not involve themselves.
Okay, so it's more the integration piece.
Yeah. Well, it's born out of the integration piece, and there's a lot of integration. But we pretty much are a retreat center organization. The Zoom calls and the Telegram, all of those things are the add-on basically to many of them retreats. There might be 4 men there who have never been in one, but they're all 3 of them are lined up. You don't have to go to a retreat to be part of it. But we're slowly building up for you. I've been focused so much on extending, for lack of better words, the brand out. And now that it's solidified, I want to come back and really focus on what it means to have the union brotherhood in Southwest Virginia.
So back on the integration piece,
Sure.
sorry, I'm stuck there. Does the organization that you're dealing or have or do integration for women as well, or is it strictly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question.
Interrupt if I can ask you to
Sure.
define integration more.
So to integrate means to take whatever information you've been given in the world. Integration circles are about you coming in at least the way I do it, about coming in a group full of like-minded people, sharing their story, getting feedback from other people, and hopefully taking away some nuggets that will help you and your stuff into your life. That makes sense.
So you can apply what you've learned to your everyday life.
Sure. So
That's
you go to this
Okay.
retreat, let's just say it's not plant medicine. You go to this retreat, you have profound experience after profound experience after profound experience. You're on cloud 9, life is good. Oh my God, I finally arrived. Without integration circles, that cloud 9 is going to wear off eventually because you don't have anybody to hold you accountable to the messages you receive. And if you're discussing with both of them, and being forthright about it, whatever it was that came up for you, and share it with people and get feedback of like, oh crap, I've been there too. Like, yeah, me too. Then it can help propel those things forward.
I think one of the hardest things about coming back from an experience like that is you come back to people who haven't had that experience. And so they don't even know how to relate to where you're at and what you're doing. So
Yeah, because you kind of,
can see where that would be super beneficial to have that support group.
Absolutely.
so that happens like at the end of the retreat and then after the retreat.
That is during the retreat and for a lifetime after the retreat. Most retreats and it'll give you like 4 weeks of all lives. Once you've been to one retreat, as you can lock in like you know 24/7 something that is about as active as they can. 74 men there. We do 3 different Zoom calls a week. Thursday is strictly integration, one is strictly. The premise is for integration of ceremony space or retreat space. Those guys have priority at the beginning of the call. And we have a Sunday check-in call, which is usually a smaller group. But we literally just go around the room and what the share, where they're at, what they've been up to, what they may or may not have feedback on inside of it. A lot of
Answered your question. Sorry, just because I wanted to understand the answer to what you were asking about integration for
Yeah.
women's groups or.
Yeah, I was just trying to find out if that was. The same things were offered for women.
Absolutely. At Soul Quest, there used to only be general integrations, the Wednesday night after hours integration, it was go in. It still to this day has over 70 people on it. But then a Monday meditation, like 12. That was it. You had to pick one of those. And I was at Soul Quest on the weekend, and I kept connecting with these guys. I went to the room and they told me, and said, what do you feel about me doing an all men's integration this afternoon? It's like, sure, but don't be surprised if not one of the 14 people came. And of those 14, 10 wanted to come on the call. So they saw the traction of that, and then this woman, Lori, Penny's doing it, Lori and Penny immediately, like 2 weeks later, started the women's group at the exact same time as her. Then a couple of weeks later, this other girl, Tiffany, started the first responders. It was all, we're veterans and first responders. It was all veterans, retired police officers. And the list goes on and on there. 12 different,
Nice.
catering to. There's people at other times that are going to go at what would be midnight to us. So there's like a 6 a.m. call that suits their afternoon. Things like that. So,
we do all know men that fit in a category like yours and your stories, and but there is still the stigma associated with being a man and being masculine and not giving over to that, and I can do it, and the male bravado. What was your tipping point? What was your tipping point that you were willing to look past that and say, I need something else? Because, I mean, there are so many men out there that are, I mean, you could just look at them and tell that they're miserable from carrying that around.
absolutely.
But it's that ingrained thing that they're carrying around that's preventing them from dropping it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. 90% of the time it's shame.
Yeah.
It's based in shame of some sort. I might be an exception to the rule because I've always had some notion. Psychology was the first thing I went to school for when I was 18 years old because I wanted to figure me out.
Mhm.
I've always been either intentionally or unintentionally was to understand myself. I've perpetuated stereotypical masculine behaviors because that's what I was taught to do. That's what society told me to do. Whether it be how to date, all the way to pornography and things like that, all of the things. But it never, it always felt like a costume. I've always been very sensitive, I've always been very emotional. And I think the turning point started way back before I even had this in mind with Sarah, who is my ex-partner and now best friend in the world. It was the first relationship I've ever been in. I didn't feel judged or criticized or held to some standard. She's never spoken in ill word to me and hate me. And it allowed me to really more. So it allowed me to look at things, feel safe with my things, even if they were messy, even if they were slightly destructive. It allowed me to see them. And because I didn't have the shame label hanging over my head, I kept telling her, the day is coming, the day is coming, the day is coming. And the day I quit drinking, I never looked back. It was because of the support that I had in knowing that I didn't have to live up to some idea of how I just started doing the issues. Be like, and I think that allowed me to pull through that quickly when I made the decision to start doing it. Like I followed the preparation to the letter for this motion, to the everything, dietary, quit smoking cigarettes, quit smoking cannabis and coffee, all on the same day. Like I was hell bent for this. Something had to give it, or I was going to do it. But I mean, over time, over a few years of working at this place, I started to see not only men, but humans in general act in a much different way than I had assumed most of society acted. Yes, of course, they're in a healing space and it's easier to like put on your best when you're there. But listening to these people share their very vulnerable stories with me, and it felt right to me to do the same. I guess that would be the tipping point. Was the first time I opened my mouth and said something that I had never said to anyone. But like, wait a minute. I just had 12 people go, yeah, me too, man. I don't have to fucking pretend this anymore. I don't have to continue being these things that other people think I'm supposed to be. I'm still a son, I'm still very emotional.
And if I can speak a little bit to that too, it's like your question, what gets someone to that point of maybe going to a retreat where maybe things can happen? I think the simple answer is invitation. I mean, even you being next to me, your wife was like, hey, are you interested in going to this? The reason I'm here is because you invited me. The reason you're here is because of an invitation. You mentioned to your friend. I mean, people aren't going to just show up out of the blue, although it is pretty divine timing, I would say, but it's someone extends an invitation. I mean, that's the really simple answer. And that's the power of it. It's just someone maybe even just said a simple word like, hey, have you heard of this? Or this is happening.
And the openness of it.
Yeah.
Of being accepting of it.
And if it's like your partner, hey, there is this thing. But I think just a simple invitation allows them. That's maybe.
Glad you're here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. I actually never thought of that. It's the invitation. Wow, I've never pieced that together before, that most of our guys, even if they came in through Soul Quest or somewhere else, it was a love and go.
My fellow brother was like, hey, come with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was for me. My wife said, you need to do something. You're coming home every day and throwing an emotion at me. And I just can't keep going with this. Like the path that this goes down is a path that eventually diverges for us. And that was not an option. Beyond my own self-preservation, that was the thing that turned me around and maybe said, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna go sit down at least and sit in the room with them. And then what you said, when I started talking about things that I didn't know if anyone would relate to, or I'd never tried to relate to anybody, but we didn't talk about them. And you said, no, I get it. And then related in your own way. And then on top of that, you said, I got 70 other guys. You want to meet them? Yes, absolutely, I do. Yeah. The power of that times 70 is, it's an absolute life changer.
It's amazing how much we have in common when we open our mouths.
So it is, you're just not afraid to. What's the judgment? Like,
Yeah.
don't do anything.
You put aside socioeconomic status, political beliefs, identity of any kind, at the core, we are all little boys and just wanting to. That's it. Period. End of story. There's no other tag or anything you can put on it. Somewhere in our childhoods and our adolescence, we were torn away from our genuine, authentic self. And whether Man, I mean, the stories range everything from sexual abuse to a passing comment. Because in the right space, a passing comment can, something as innocuous as you shouldn't eat that, it'll make you fat. Right? And then this person ends up with an eating disorder, 15 years of their life.
And not
Things
knowing
like
why.
that. You know, the person who said it probably wasn't thinking you should go have anorexia. But the stories range. I had a very traumatic first few weeks of my life with an angry man. Was as violent as he could be with people. That's my story. That's what the start of my story. Then abandonment from two different mothers, a birth mother and adopted. There's guys that come in that say they've never been abused in any way, shape, or form, but they got picked on in high school. And it screwed up their dating life, it screwed up their ability to make friends. It's mind-blowing. The variety of stories. Jeffy said, we've got one guy now that's living on a friend's boat, barely has a job, he's been there a week, doesn't know where he's gonna live. Who shows up consistently and participates. We got retired commercial airline pilots. And those two can talk without being attached to the story and gain insight. You know, Carl, the pilot, a few weeks ago said that he gained some humility from this kid that's struggling. Like to take it down a peg, like I'm one decision away from being where you are. That's all that works. It's beautiful to witness.
So how has this affected your relationships before and after? Like, what were you before? And I mean, where has it made?
I think you can speak to that better than anyone. You don't have to.
I would say it's improved my relationship with myself than anything else.
Okay.
You know, because I had a great group of friends before I met these gentlemen. And they just expanded my network, you know, even more so. So I was like, wow, I'm really blessed with the greatest group of brothers and sisters a man could ask for. You know? And I've had great loss in my life, but I've also had great gain. So that's just how I would describe it. At least from my personal experience, I just know my relationship with myself is so much better. Because it's you're able to look yourself in the mirror with the shadow work and see the parts that before you were ashamed to look at, you know, for whatever reason. You realize, why was I so ashamed of this? You know, why am I giving myself a hard time over something so trivial? Whatever. The shadow work is just a mirror. Yeah, so it's improved my relationship with myself, simple.
But do you let down your vulnerability more so now?
Oh,
That you, that you gain that relationship with yourself? Okay.
It's once guys have been around for a little bit and kind of grease their wheels in our online containers, they disappear for a while when they get to a good place. Then they come back 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, like, holy crap, you wouldn't believe the kind of things that I just talked to a stranger today about meditation. I kiss my wife hello and goodbye every day. I asked her how the day is at the end of the day. And before, when they came in just a couple of minutes prior, they were very shut down and closed off. Yeah.
Well, I can say, like as a woman outside, like witnessing that, because I can see where you're asking, because you see, like when we're asking about the male experience and seeing their transformation, I'm sitting here right now in awe of him. And I'm not saying this to schmooze because I don't. I don't do that. But I really, like I was sitting here this whole time really in awe of who this man is sitting in front of you all, in front of me as well. And the subtleties, nobody else can know that through the lens of, that's my experience knowing that. But that's the transformation that happens, is I see somebody who, I know his whole story, pretty much all of it. And I also know the moment that he said yes to his first weekend in ceremony, and the man that came back from that was not the same person. And that wasn't it. And talk about the integration from that, I've witnessed a couple of years of integration, and it really is never ending. There's layers and it's spiralic. And now he's in a space with other men around him, so now you have these stories coming to him and he's reflecting things back. But it's that willingness and ability to show up just from saying yes to that invitation and then saying yes to receiving that as well. And it's not black and white, it is not simple, but when you have that moment of just pausing and saying, okay, I'm interested. Because I, prior to that moment of him saying yes to that weekend, wasn't sure what was going to come. Because like you said, you see a man that's closed completely. There doesn't really seem to be hope from that. But providing that space around him, not that that was my obligation to do that, and not every man has that, but it would hope that, again, just in this small circle, every voice is hearing this and somebody else can be saying it to somebody else, and it's just enough. You know?
Thank you. So
if we have, someone in our lives, we feel like this would be a really good conversation for them to have. What's the best way for us to introduce that concept and get them in touch with you all?
I'd say point them to the website.
Okay.
Just let them poke around. They'll see that there's not, I don't even think the word God is on the website at all.
Yeah.
But we hint to the fact that we were created by something.
Yeah.
Tons of photos that are always enticing to men to see what we do. And then on the final page of the it says Telegram. Just click on that, answer some question, get in the Telegram group and sit back and watch.
Okay.
You don't have to say anything. Introductions are nice, and you can have a couple guys slip in, nobody's reading them or said hello, and they leave.
Yeah.
On an institute, like when a guy comes in now, he's gonna acknowledge your presence and let you know that you don't have to say anything. When you come on our Zoom calls, you don't have to turn on the camera. I just need to verify you're a man, then you can turn it on.
Right.
But just sit and observe and see what feels good or not. And most of the time, guys are like, wow. Yeah, they hear 4 or 5 guys talk, and that's all.
Nice. Okay. Great, thank you.
One of my guys is this thing coming 6. It's like it's you just see the wall.
You're gonna have a men's group every week here, or is this just a one-time thing, or what's the plan? I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, this is just a meet and greet to talk about, spread the word a little bit.
We should have a monthly meeting, it's once a
We're going
month.
to the next one. You want to find a.
We were just nodding and agreeing that we are looking for people to get into this space and hold regular meetings like this as part of our mission in order to bring these things to the community, be open about sharing gifts and experiences, no matter what they are. And that's as you said, you're looking for a place where we're shaking our hands there. So
We had a quick meeting.
yeah, we did.
We got contacted, it's done.
So if you're looking for a space, let's talk.
Curiosity.
You can ask me for it.
Okay. Let's get a dialogue going.
You gotta be careful when you say that.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's actually very funny because after your first trip down to Florida, did have a conversation. Cause we were over at Unity, not Unity,